And welcome to the Industry 4 Community Podcast, a live stream on a Sunday, which I never do. I'm your host with the most, Walker D. Reynolds. So what I want to do is I wanted to do a follow-up on the PTC earnings call. So I have spent the last few days, Zach and I did this podcast a couple days ago, talking about PTC. I went through and did a ton of homework, talked to a ton of people over the last couple of days, and I want to make sure I do a follow up here. I'm going to go through the whole earnings call, and then I'm going to talk about some of the conversations I've had and kind of what does it mean, and do some larger commentary over the whole industry. And decided I'm just going to do it live, rather in the words of Bill O'Reilly. Fuck it, we'll do it live. All right, so I'm going to just do it live. So I want to start with some of the feedback I got from the podcast on Friday. So I actually felt whenever I do a podcast like that, where I'm really just kind of going off the cuff completely. I've prepped, like I've basically read, but I don't go in thinking, hey, I don't know what the feedback's going to be. We're doing it live, so I don't know what the feedback's going to be, what the questions are going to be, what the comments are going to be in the during the live stream. Sometimes I walk out of those and I'm just not. I don't know. I feel pretty bad about it, or maybe I really question whether I was fair. It's very, very important to me that I'm fair in podcasts and in all of our content. It's really, really important that the people, when I'm calling somebody out or I'm calling an organization out, or I am talking about my experience in this industry, it's really important to me that the people, if I mention a name, people believe I was being fair. They may not like what I said. They may not like what I said about them or their company, but it is important to me that they think that I'm fair. All right. I want to go over a text message I got the next morning after the podcast, and I'm not going to read basically the message I got was, hey, listen, hey buddy, I think your brand and message would be much stronger if you resist criticizing individuals and you just focus on the companies. Obviously, there's going to be well-warranted exceptions, but I'd encourage you to be sensitive to whether a comment will be perceived as ad hominem attack versus a disagreement with their decisions or actions. I want your voice to be as strong and as effective as it can be and a continued force for change, right? And so my response to this person was no disagreement there at all. I am struggling to understand how I attacked Mike. So there was a previous conversation, Mike DiTilio, who was the chief operating officer at PTC. I'm going to go Neil Barea. Basically, I read between the lines that essentially Neil Barea, he said all the right things in the earnings call, but really what he's saying is Mike's not the right guy for operations. Operations at PTC oversees product planning, product strategy, product development. And it was clear that Neil was saying Mike's not the right guy. And if you look at the lack of movement over the last 5 or 6 years at PTC in core products like ThingWorx, which is really Rockwell's innovation suite, which is ThingWorx, and hey Mark, how's it going, Mark Accato, and ThingWorx and Kepware after the Kepware acquisition in 2018, that really falls on the group. That really falls on the operations group, who he's in charge of, right? So I was saying, I'm struggling, responded to this person, I said, I'm struggling to understand how I attacked Mike by giving my observation on Neil's statement. Neil was clearly saying that Mike DiTilio, who is the COO of PTC, did a poor job and they're going in a different direction. He never mentions ThingWorx in the earnings statement, in the earnings call. He never mentions Kepware. He never mentions Rockwell Automation in that call. He's taking over Mike DiTilio's job, Neil is, and he even tried to give him cover by saying they talked about his future, right? That's all garbage stuff. And then I promised this person, I said, listen, I'm going to clarify that I'm not making a judgment about Mike. But companies are run by leaders who make a lot of money and walk away with golden parachutes when their teams suffer for their bad decisions. and leadership. And if I offer anyone I criticize to come on to defend themselves, is that not the fairness they deserve? Or should I keep that criticism to myself and give them cover by only mentioning the name of the company? I hear you 100%, but I am struggling to understand how I was unfair to them. And then we went through a further conversation, and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to, in the follow-up podcast, I will do a clarification here. But I am going to go through the whole earnings call here, because this is a big deal. I've had a lot of conversations over the last couple of days. I didn't really sleep last night because I knew I was going to shoot this. And what's happening at PTC is very, very enlightening. Okay, so I want to kind of talk about a little bit of background. Okay, so PTC, Neil Barea, who's the new CEO at PTC, he took over in February this year. But Neil came from one of PTC's acquisitions, which was ServiceMax. Okay, so PTC acquired ServiceMax in January of 23, and then 13 months later, Neil, who was at ServiceMax, takes over as CEO of PTC proper. Okay, so that's kind of a big deal that the CEO, and I don't remember if Neil was the actual CEO. Yeah, he was. He was CEO of ServiceMax. So PTC acquires ServiceMax, and 13 months later, the CEO of the acquired company becomes the CEO of the parent company. Now, I don't need to tell you how rare that actually is. That doesn't happen that often, number one. All right. Number two, ServiceMax isn't part of the core business of PTC, right? I mean, ServiceMax is a completely different style of company than PTC proper was, right? So it's kind of a big deal that someone not from your core business, 13 months after you acquire them, becomes the CEO of your company. And then after one full quarter, he takes over in the middle of a quarter. After one complete quarter with the senior leadership, he boots out the chief operating officer, who's been at the PTC for a quarter century, boots out the chief operating officer and says, I'm taking over his job, so I'm going to be CEO and COO. So what does that tell you? Chief executive officer is in charge of strategy, right? So they set the strategic vision for a company. The chief operating officer is the person who is tasked with executing on that strategy. They oversee all operations that take that strategy and turn it into a reality. And Neil Barea says within 6 months of him taking over the company, the guy who has been chief operating officer is out. Now, Mike DiTilio wasn't COO that long. He wasn't in the job that long, but he's been at PTC for 25 years. And I'll suspect by early next year, Mike DiTilio will have nothing to do with PTC whatsoever. He won't be at that company at all. This is a big fucking deal. It is a big deal that Neil Barea did not mention Kepware, did not mention ThingWorx, did not mention Rockwell Automation in the earnings call. It is a big deal. It is a huge deal for the future of PTC. The future of PTC, I suspect, because I know behind the scenes, PTC is doing very little with Kepware. Essentially, they're doing nothing. They've done nothing with ThingWorx in terms of developing the feature sets of ThingWorx. They've done nothing with it. It's just languished. They developed a platform, they had a vision, and they couldn't execute on that vision. I'm going to talk about why they couldn't. But I want to make sure I'm fair. I want to really clarify this earnings call, all right? So first thing I want to do is I want to go over who the players are, okay? So Neil Barea, who is the new chief executive officer at PTC. By the way, if I mention your name on this podcast at PTC, there is an open invitation to you to come on the podcast and have a conversation, and you can have a conversation with me. You can defend anything I've said that you think I'm wrong. I'll be all ears. I'll bring you on and I'll shut up, and you can say your piece. That doesn't, but it will come at the condition that you're going to answer follow-up questions. Okay. So Neil Barea is the chief executive officer at PTC. He's been in the industry 23 years across global operations, financial, and executive positions. Prior to joining PTC, he was the CEO at ServiceMax and transformed the company into a recognized leader in field service management. Okay, when PTC completed its acquisition of ServiceMax in January of 23, Neil led PTC's service lifecycle management business and joined PTC's executive leadership team. Okay, Neil became CEO of PTC February 14th, 2024, 15 months after ServiceMax was acquired by PTC. Okay, as CEO, Neil focuses on PTC's global business strategy, customer experience, and company culture. Previously, Neil served as an operating partner at Silver Lake, a global leader in technology investing. Early in his career, Neil was CEO of IPC Systems, a global provider of specialized technology solutions for the financial services community. He resides in Boston. He earned his Bachelor of Science from NYU, and he serves on the board of directors at Streetwise Partners. I don't know a lot about Neil prior to his ServiceMax tenure, but I did know of him when he was at ServiceMax. Okay. ServiceMax is a service provider organization. Okay. All right. Mike DiTilio, who's the other big player here, the chief operating officer of PTC. And this is important information to understand. Okay. Because I want some commentary about this when I'm all done. So DiTilio is president and chief operating officer responsible for PTC's day-to-day operations. Okay. In this role, Mike oversees product development, sales and marketing, customer success, strategy, and IT across both the Digital Thread and Velocity business units. And I'm going to come back to the Digital Thread business later. Zach, if you're watching, will you engage with the commenters? I see Rankin and I see people commenting, but I'm going to just keep going forward. All right. Since joining PTC over 20 years ago, Mike has led teams in every part of the world where PTC operated. Most recently, he was president of PTC's Digital Thread Group. Now, I don't know Neil Barua's position on Digital Thread, but you guys should all know, that I am not a fan of Digital Thread. And Digital Thread as an architecture and a digital philosophy works for specific use cases, but it doesn't work for a scalable digital business. Okay. And how do we know that? Because that isn't what companies like Tesla and Amazon do. They don't build objects on the edge and then pass those objects all through the business. After this speech, I'm starting to think that it's not a good idea to implement ThingWorx as a future solution for the company. Absolutely not. I think right now, if you're looking at ThingWorx, okay, or you have ThingWorx, you should strongly consider your position. You should really look deeply. And now, I'm sure the folks at PTC and those product groups are going to say all the right things, okay? But it is a big fucking deal that Neil Barua did not mention ThingWorx or Kepware or Rockwell Automation, where ThingWorx is the innovation suite for Rockwell, okay, in his comments on the earnings call. I'm going to read the whole earnings call here in a second. All right. Most recently, he was president of PTC's Digital Thread Group. Hopefully, Neil is not a fan of Digital Thread, and that's part of the reason he's pushing Mike out. Consisting of 7 businesses with 5,000 plus employees that bring in more than, I think it looks like $1.5 billion in annual revenue. Mike was also instrumental in helping PTC transition to a subscription business model and adopt a digital-first marketing strategy, both of which were key to PTC's ability to deliver sustained growth during the pandemic-induced economic downturn and have become foundations for PTC's new business model. Mike is a member of the board of directors for NAM, which is the National Association of Manufacturers. One of the things that this guy told me was like, listen, Mike is a true believer in American manufacturing. He's a good guy. I never said he wasn't a good guy. What I said is that he's presided over PTC languishing when it comes to manufacturing software solutions. Okay. Mike is prior to PTC, he was a worldwide marketing product manager for Abbott Laboratories Diagnostics Division and an executive officer in the Army. Mike earned a Bachelor of Science in Management from U.S. Military Academy at West Point. All right. Thank you for your service, Mike. Right. But by all accounts, the guy he's a good guy. I'm not making a judgment about whether he's a good person or not. But who's going to make the argument that when it comes to manufacturing solutions specifically, PTC has been excelling. Who is going to make the argument that since PTC did the acquisition of Kepware in 2018, they've made Kepware a better company? Kepware has sustained in spite of PTC, not because of PTC. Kepware is an American, success story. And what's really crazy about Kepware, and I love Kepware, the people at Kepware, the company Kepware, and the product KepServer EX. I don't love everything. There are things I wish they did. I asked them to adopt Sparkplug, in fucking 2016, 2017, something like that. And Tom Godot, who's the product manager, has resisted. He still resists to this day. He's still in charge of the product. But that doesn't mean that I don't think it's a great product. There are things that I really wish that they had, focused less on what the customer was asking for and focused more on what the customer needed. Because the folks at Kepware, if you guys like Sam Elsner, those folks at Kepware is uniquely positioned. They have a lot of people who are on the plant floor all across the world. They do applications on the plant floor, data connectivity, connect, collect, store. But probably the greatest assemblage of talent around connect, collect, store in the world comes from Kepware. It is an incredibly valuable asset, not just the product, but the people. And what did PTC do with that? Jack squat. But that doesn't mean that I think Kepware's done everything right. I wish that they continue to develop the Linux drivers. I really wish that they had a suite of drivers that ran in non-Windows operating systems easily. I wish that they had adopted Sparkplug. I wish that they had been more focused. I mean, I don't understand why the folks at Kepware who are in Portland and the folks at Highbyte who are in Portland are not walking arm in arm with one another. I suspect, and this is complete speculation, this is totally my opinion, but I suspect that the good people who are now running Highbyte, who used to run Kepware, do not agree with the way that PTC went to fucking market and made their decisions. That's what I suspect. Now, I will say this. I have had no conversations with anyone at Highbyte about PTC. I don't ask those questions. Okay, so I'm just speculating here. I'm just speculating. But I suspect that that's true. Okay? If you look at the people at Highbyte, they all fucking came from Kepware. Right down to Carolyn Barron, who managed the systems integrators at Kepware. She's now the partner manager at Kepware. Let him leave. Elon Musk would have never let him leave Tesla. That is not good leadership on PTC's part. And by the way, there are still incredible people at Kepware. So I don't want this to be an indictment of Kepware. This is an indictment of PTC's ineffective leadership and poor vision in the market, and we are now seeing this. Okay? We are now seeing this. All right? So let's go to the earnings call itself. I see that I'm getting like an error in YouTube saying you're not getting enough video. Let's hope that's not true. All right, I want to go over the whole earnings call. Okay, let me open this widget. Oh, you guys are experiencing buffering. That's what it is. All right. It's going through now. All right, got up. All right, good. Thanks, guys. All right, so prepared remarks. The operator says, "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for standing by and welcome to PTC's 2024 third quarter conference call. During today's presentation, all parties will be in a listen-only mode. Following the presentation, the conference will open for questions. I'd now like to turn the call over to Matt Shimao, PTC's head of investor relations. Please go ahead." I'm going to go through and I am going to comment on the things that they say. So Matt is the senior vice president of investor relations at PTC. Good afternoon. Thank you, Adam. Welcome to PTC's fiscal 2024 third-party quarter call. On the call today is Neil Barua, the Chief Executive Officer, and Christian Telvetti, the Chief Financial Officer. Let's go ahead and let me read her, his bio. So he's the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at PTC. He's an Executive Vice President and CFO, responsible for overseeing worldwide accounting, financial planning and analysis, tax and investor relations, and information technology functions. He's held this role since May of 2019. He was previously at PTC from 2008 to 16 in several roles, including Corporate Vice President of Finance and Vice President of Investor Relations and Corporate Communications. In his time away from PTC, he was CFO at a SaaS company, Savos and SyncSort. He has a Master of Science in Management from Boston University and a BA in Psychology from Allegheny College. All right, so let's see what Matt has to say here. So today's conference call is being broadcast live through an audio webcast, and a replay will be available later today on PTC's website. During the call, PTC will make forward-looking statements, okay, including guidance as to future operating results. Because such statements deal with future events, actual results may differ materially, all that blah, 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 blah. The forward-looking statements, including guidance provided during this call, are valid only as of today's date, July 31, 2024, and we assume no obligation, blah, 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 blah. With that, I'll turn it over to Neil. So Neil says, thanks, Matt. In Q3, we again delivered solid, consistent, constant currency ARR growth up to 12% year over year, demonstrating that our portfolio of products is resonating with customers. Our Q3 free cash flow growth was also solid, rising 29%. Christian will take you through those results and forward-looking guidance in detail. I'm not going to go through I will go through the financials, but I'm not going to talk about them a little bit. Before we get into more detail, I want to recognize Mike DiTullio, the guy I'm firing. He doesn't say that, but who will transition out of the president and COO roles at the end of the fiscal year and continue as an advisor to me into 2025. Mike's part in PTC's success has been profound over his tenure of more than 25 years. We certainly wouldn't be the company we are today without him. In addition, he's been a great partner to me as I've stepped into the CEO role. We've been discussing his future plans, and we both agree that it's the right time to start this transition process. When we start fiscal 25, we'll no longer have the chief operating officer position within our leadership structure. At this stage of my CEO tenure, my approach is to be close to the business and be more directly involved with operations and execution, especially for our key priorities. Accordingly, I will be assuming many of Mike's responsibilities. That is the most important statement in the whole earnings call. Like, I mean, that is by far the most important statement. Okay, what does it mean? It means we haven't been operating effectively for a long time, and I don't know what the fuck's wrong, and I need to be close to it to figure it out. That's what he's saying. All right. Additionally, I'd like to reiterate what I said on last quarter's call, which is that I'm turning over lots of stones and looking at everything in this company in order to usher in a new phase of focus and effectiveness across the entire company. Zach, do me a favor, look up PTC's PE ratio. Aren't they trading like 70 times over earnings? But just please check that out for me. To that end, while Mike's change was externally visible because we filed an 8K, there's numerous other changes we've already made and are making across many different areas of the organization. It's an ongoing process that we're doing with the intent of driving more effectiveness in the pursuit of our incredible growth potential. Let's now move to slide 4, which highlights our product portfolio and strategy. So here's his strategy. As a reminder, our 5 focus areas are 1, first and foremost, PLM. If you have not watched the video that Zach shot and put on his LinkedIn, also I think it's on his Instagram, where he talked about PLM, like how he talks about how can you be a leader in PLM if you don't have native integration to the edge. He does a very good job of talking about the importance of closed loop integration to the edge in one common digital infrastructure. You should watch that video. Okay. Stock's trading at 172 a share. Give me the PE ratio, price to earnings. So number 1, PLM is their primary focus area, which is driven primarily by Windchill. 2 is ALM, which is driven by their Code Beamer product. 3 is SLM, which is primarily driven by ServiceMax. 4 is CAD, which is driven primarily by Creo. And 5 is our continued focus on SaaS. Okay. These are the areas where we can create the greatest customer value and are the areas where we are focusing our resources and attention. At the most basic level, our customers need to introduce new products at a faster pace and with higher quality. It is not unusual to hear from customers that they need to shorten their new product intro timelines in half. Okay, their strategy is they're trading at 72 times earnings. Okay, that means that their stock price is trading on potential. Okay, and a huge piece of that potential was the promises of ThingWorx, the acquisition of Kepware, and the partnership with Rockwell for manufacturing solutions from L3 all the way down to the plant floor. There's nothing here in their strategy that will sustain that. Okay, no mention of Kepware, no mention of ThingWorx, which, by the way, it's been languishing. I can tell you why ThingWorx failed if people want to know, but and I suspect they have measured customer satisfaction for those who are using ThingWorx, and it's pretty low. And again, I'm speculating, but I suspect that's the reality. He said that's not possible without digital transformation across their workflows. So in order for them to produce products faster with a PLM focused, it's not possible without digital transformation across their workflows, which is exactly what our products enable. It's also worth highlighting that we're bringing our suite of software offerings together to help product companies improve their competitiveness. Given the unique breadth and openness of our portfolio, we can enable end-to-end digital thread initiatives. This is very concerning. Neil Barua, I challenge you to come on our podcast and let's have a debate about the merits of digital thread as digital infrastructure. Please. All right? You're selling a dream to manufacturers on digital thread. Your own words. Okay? I mean, I've produced many videos about the limitations of digital thread. We teach entire courses around here's why digital thread doesn't work. Here's why when, Toyota tried to use digital thread with Azure IoT for their plan of the future, it didn't work. I mean, we've talked about this a million times. Digital thread is a promise, just like digital twin. It's a promise that these vendors have been making, and it's a promise that they've been making that they can't deliver on because they don't understand manufacturing. OT is not IT, and you can't run OT like IT. Why? Because production is always king. Always, 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 always. No matter what, on the plant floor, you do whatever it takes to get the thing out the back door. You can't, the standard, which digital thread requires a very rigid standard. The standard goes out the fucking window when we have a problem. Moreover, we subcontract out to our machine builders the data and information models that they're putting on the equipment that we're buying from them. That's why vendor A is going to give us a pump that digitally looks A, and vendor B is going to get us a pump that digitally looks C. And Rockwell tried to do this 20 years ago with Plant Packs. Plant Packs was supposed to solve everyone's problems. Sesme's trying to do the same thing with profiles. And none of them ask the question why this shit doesn't take. Like, none of them actually says, why is it we know best. Why is it they don't just adopt one pump object? Why is it they don't just adopt one motor object? Why is it they don't coalesce the pump, motor, instrument objects with the business objects into a higher information model that we can just pass as a digital thread through the business? It literally reveals that you have no experience in manufacturing on the plant floor and you don't fucking know what it is that actually happens out there. Manufacturing shit is hard. It's not easy. And nothing goes according to plan. Nothing goes according to plan. And if your digital infrastructure doesn't support what we refer to as additive data modeling, okay, additive context. If you don't support additive context, which digital thread does not support, then you can't be a digital infrastructure for a manufacturer. That is, if I can't add, we use the red and blue concept. Red is standardized. Let's say I've got a pump, okay, and that pump has 6 or 7 parameters that apply to every single pump. They are red. We have an object that is red. And then you have blue parameters that I can add that are unique to that pump. Like, for example, if we say that every pump in our organization, every single pump of our organization is going to have a model number, a serial number, an inlet flow rate, an outlet flow rate, RPM, let's say we take those 5, right? And total volume, rated viscosity, we take that and we say that's what our pump has. But I have a pump that is going to take on, we have a pump where we're going to add to its object 2 sensors. Now, on the inlet and the outlet of the pump, we're going to add a pressure differential instrument, on both sides, okay? And that I don't have on some other pump. How digital thread assumes that you can quantify what a pump is on the edge. And then you can store it as a quote unquote pump in a data store. And then you can retrieve it through an API as a quote unquote pump. And then you can visualize it in a visualization layer as a quote unquote pump. And then you can analyze it in an analysis layer as a quote unquote pump, right up until you add something to it that wasn't in the definition. And these digital thread solutions never fucking account for that one edge case, that simple one. Never mind the edge case of I've got an asset. That asset has an asset ID in our ERP system. That's the system of ownership. But we also have an asset ID. We have an asset ID in our CMMS system for the same asset. So digital thread doesn't account for how we reconcile those two things together. That's additive context. This is why all of you who have tried the digital thread approach, it's the reason you fail. Is it going to work in some specific use cases? Absolutely. But it is not going to work as the foundation of your digital infrastructure for your organization. And fuck, we've been preaching this 7 years now, 8 years. Okay? So Neil is still talking digital thread. That is concerning. If I worked at PTC, I'd be shitting myself. My CEO is still using digital thread as in the strategy statement. Okay? Our digital thread enables product companies to break down silos, streamline workflows, and achieve interoperability across departments, functions, and systems with a single version of truth. No, it does not. Absolutely doesn't. I would love to debate you on this. Okay, Neil? It also secures the quality, consistency, and traceability of product-related data, ensuring that the data is up to date, accessible, reliable, and actionable. With the digital thread, the right data is delivered to the right people at the right time and in the right context across the value chain. No, it is not. I mean, you could probably achieve this with a digital thread architecture. You could probably achieve it in a completely greenfield implementation. And it would work. Digital thread would be sustainable for 6 or 8 months, right up until the first operational failure on the plant floor or the first continuous improvement cycle, where what we defined with our thread to begin with now changes. We improve our process. Okay, now they're going to argue that Windchill is closed loop, and I actually did an interview in Boston with one of their product manager guys on Windchill last year. There's some really cool shit they're doing, and I think they had like a skateboard manufacturing facility, and all I kept thinking was, there's a reason you pick skateboards, because they're really, really simple. They're really simple. There's one area in a skateboard factory. There's one process. He said, to unlock this potential, I've started to focus on our operation, taking a fresh look at the ways to continue driving improvements. On last quarter's call, we discussed rebalancing some research and development resources away from creating new standalone IoT and augmented reality applications to instead support growth of our core products. That was just the first step. Putting in place an organizational design that enables us to scale more programmatically will set us up for continued success in the future. Well, here's the interesting thing. PTC doesn't support unified namespace. Okay, ThingWorx doesn't support UNS. Could I do it? Could I integrate into a UNS with ThingWorx? Sure, I can. I mean, but does it natively out of the box? No. It's not plug and play. You're not going to integrate ThingWorx directly into unified namespace and go low code, no code dashboard building. That's not going to happen. Okay. Moreover, there is no mechanism. Go ahead and try to export a thing object in ThingWorx. Try to export that object into a unified namespace. So that is consume data from an external data infrastructure, modify it, augment it, create a calculation, and then take ThingWorx and publish that back into a UNS. Try to do that. Can't. Everything he's talking about there, He says that they've been investing in ThingWorx. No, they haven't. No, they have not. ThingWorx has barely changed in 5 years. And when they bought Kepware in 2018, they haven't invested in Kepware. I think that whatever strategic decision they made in 2018, about why they were going to go to the edge with Kepware, they changed their mind. One of the decisions Neil made after taking over as CEO was to give Kepware, the folks at Kepware, more autonomy over making their own decisions outside of PTC's strategic vision. And the first thing I thought when I heard that was, okay, they're positioning to sell Kepware. Okay. All right. We are now primarily turning our attention to optimizing our go-to-market and G&A strategies. As I mentioned up front, we've leaned out the go-to-market management structure, so there are less layers between me and our customers. At this point, we're moving forward without the chief operating officer and the chief revenue officer roles. Okay, so that's telling. The chief revenue officer is the reason that PTC seemed like a sales organization. I mean, the stuff I saw when they were going to market with ThingWorx, the stuff I saw were they were selling at all cost. They were making promises about the platform that it couldn't deliver on. And I said in the previous video on Friday, I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if they were intentionally selling things that they knew ThingWorx couldn't do. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Maybe it was something they thought it was in the roadmap. I don't know that part. But what I do know is that ThingWorx had a sell at all cost strategy. One of the things PTC did, and one of the things that the PTC sales group would do is they would do everything in their power to isolate the customer from their external advisors. So like if you were an integrator working with that customer and you weren't pro ThingWorx, what they would do is they would promote and advocate for the integrator that was pro ThingWorx. And they wouldn't engage in terms of trying to sell ThingWorx because to the integrator, to the existing partners, because those partners they couldn't stand up to scrutiny. If the partner was asking Socratic questions about how does ThingWorx handle this, and how do I solve that problem there? What is the level of effort here? And what's the average velocity of a developer who works using the API in ThingWorx? That kind of stuff. They could not handle the scrutiny. There's a guy who commented on one of the LinkedIn posts. What's the difference between IoT and IIoT? IoT is the Internet of Things, so that would be like your thermostat in your house, all the shit you have on the web in your house. The IIoT, it's the Industrial Internet of Things, is the same thing, but it's in plants. It's in manufacturing facilities. The PTC was a sales organization. And now, I think this is encouraging that he got rid of the CRO, and maybe it's encouraging he's getting rid of Mike Dutilio based on this conversations I've had. Maybe Mike's the one who's just getting his head chopped off. He's the one who's being blamed for the operational failures, but that isn't. It sounds to me like he wasn't in charge long enough for it to be on him. But what I do know is that he was at PTC for 20-something years. There's plenty of evidence out there in the market that Digital Thread is a failed architecture, and yet you still got their fucking CEO singing the praises of Digital Thread. Let me say this. If you are looking at digitally transforming, that is creating a strategy in your business to make data the primary commodity in your business, okay? And you are looking at various types of architecture, okay? And you come across Digital Thread. At a minimum, what I want you to do is I want you to try and find an organization that uses Digital Thread as their digital infrastructure to make data the primary commodity in their business, where they have successfully become a smart business over 3 to 5 years using that architecture, and then we're able to plug into a digital supply chain. Remember, becoming a smart business is connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, find patterns, report, solve. That first section, connect, collect, store, analyze, visualize, that's the bulk of what you're doing for the first 3 years while you're collecting data and storing it, Now, you're not just collecting your objects, your digital objects, which are core to a thread. A digital thread is basically I create an object on the edge. Say I create a triangle. I drop that triangle. I collect it as a triangle. I store it as a triangle. I write a little API that will retrieve it as a triangle, and then I build a little object to visualize with. That's a triangle, and then I build an analysis pattern that's also a triangle. They're all the same. There's no mechanism for additive context. So as that data, that object that got created on the edge, as it moves up the business stack, PLC, HMI, SCADA, MES, ERP, cloud, and then all the other ancillary systems, ARAP, financial, CMMS, all that, warehouse management, all that kind of stuff, context is added to the events that came from that object. The object's no longer a triangle. It's a different shape. Digital thread assumes the shape stays the same. That's why it fails. That's why it fails. It's really not fucking hard. And by the way, anyone who goes and tests my claims, they come to the same damn conclusion. I'm not telling you to trust me. I'm telling you to test it. All right. So he says it's about focus. He goes, as I mentioned, at this point, we're moving forward without the COO and CRO. That's a huge fucking deal. I mean, a warning bell should be going off. And I'll be working directly with the head of sales and head of customer success. We're actively looking at every facet of our business to continue driving alignment and effectiveness across our entire company. I can tell you that from the conversations I've been having, correct, Shannon, this is very important. Shannon Looper just said a thing. Digital thread pushes you to only connect to anything for an IoT application. One of the flaws in a digital thread strategy is that they make assumptions about how the data will be consumed. And rule number one is make no assumption about how the data will be consumed. All data matters. To become a data company, all data matters. Because part of the value of a digital infrastructure is using models, training models that will find patterns in that data you can't see with the naked eye. Digital thread assumes that you can see the patterns with the naked eye, and therefore you can model that which you need to extract. That's true in some cases, but the real value in data is in the patterns we can't see. And we have to use digital tools to find those patterns for us. This is why the unified analytics framework coming from Flow Software, which will plug into a unified namespace, basically it's going to natively do analysis on any data in a UNS for you, as long as you're they're literally finding the patterns for you. This is why I've loved Flow for as long as I have, because all I have to do is drop Flow and send any data point into their analytics platform, and there's out of the box analysis they'll do, linear regression, patterns they will find on that data, and they can predict my production for the shift. They can do all sorts of cool shit just by dropping it into their backend. Okay. This quarter, I'll touch on what we've been seeing with customers for Windchill PLM, Codebeamer, ServiceMax. Starting with PLM on slide 5. This is our product lifecycle management, and Windchill is our flagship PLM. PLM systems tend to be really sticky and are mission critical for our customers. No mention of ThingWorx, Kepware, nothing. Okay. This is the software that had the function of helping CAD engineers keep track of their CAD files. Now PLM is at the epicenter of digital transformation initiatives and product companies. No, it is not. I mean, in fact, I'll do another video on it. I don't even know if we ever published the interview I did with the Windchill guy. Not that I don't like Windchill as a PLM, but it makes assumptions. Like, for example, that the PLM software is the center of the business. So all PLM is today is what ERP was touted as 15 years ago or 20 years ago, that it was where you were going to run your business. It's not true. Your business happens on the plant floor. I hate to break the news to you. There doesn't mean that there isn't value in PLM. There actually is. But, someone even said to me the other day in LinkedIn, he said, hey, I'm going to be doing a training on PLM. Do you recommend anything? And I said, yeah, stop calling it PLM. Why don't you break it down into its business functions? And he said, I agree 100%. He's like, in fact, I'm not even going to mention PLM. He's going to break it down to the unique individual business functions. Let me see what Matt Paris is saying here. I still think there's a disconnect with the definition of digital thread. I suspect their definition is to connect digital engineering of designs more directly to manufacturing, eliminating manual steps. I think that's one part of it, Matt. But digital thread comes from software. Even the term, it comes from software development. and it comes from object-oriented software development. What it is it is a way of taking the software the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, and the software stack of back-end API front end, and turn it on its side and expand it out for a business workflow. That's what digital thread is. But very good point. Yes, but you need a new thread for B and C, so you end up with lots of unrelated threads. You need to interconnect with web type structure, still make up threads, but much, right? Well, the point is you can extract the definition of a thread. Let's say I create an object that's A, and and A is red, but I add in a couple of parameters that are blue, that are unique to maybe a separate function or whatever. I have the ability to just extract that which I had predefined. What I say is define on the edge as little as possible, or define on the edge of your digital infrastructure as little as possible. You want to model on the edge as much as you can. And then you want to add to that model as it moves up the stack. And it doesn't actually move up the stack. It goes into an infrastructure, and as producers and consumers produce and consume, they add to it, right? What I say is that you want to define as little as you can on your digital edge, okay? And what you really want to do is abstract when you retrieve. Capture every event and then abstract. Similar to the way that you create a result set in a database. If I store just raw events in a database, I can write a query that will create an object model for me, which is columns and rows and data in a specific order. That is an information model. Result set's an information model. I argue and have proven, I think, with unified namespace, that is the appropriate way to do digital data modeling. That doesn't mean that there's no place for pre-modeling data, but you have to have a mechanism to add to it. But Matt Paris's point is well taken. The complexity becomes untenable. Quality and time to market gets impacted. Sooner or later, it becomes very clear that having an advanced PLM system is a strategic necessity. Agreed there. In general, manufacturing companies have a long way to go in terms of their digital transformation journeys. Yep, absolutely. And when a product company gets really serious about optimizing and automating their design and manufacturing processes, we tend to see large PLM expansion projects and step function increases in ARR as customers expand their Windchill deployments in terms of both seats and functionality. A good example of this is our Q3 win as a supplier to the automotive industry that specializes in cabling and wiring harness solutions. I actually know this customer. Given the rise of software-defined vehicles and the importance of electronic wiring system, the role of this company in the automotive supply chain has grown. It's interesting that this company already appreciated the value of leveraging their PLM system beyond engineering to drive better business outcomes. They're using Windchill within R&D, but they're currently using homegrown tools to drive collaboration across engineering, supply chain, manufacturing, and quality insurance teams. And the question I would have for you, the question I would have directly for Neil as it relates to this is, how let's look at the outsourced supply chains. So if you look at what what auto manufacturers did between the 1930s and the 1960s, they did a lot of outsourcing, and then part of what saved Chrysler was that they insourced their supply chain. Okay, one of the reasons that Tesla produces, Tesla's cycle time is just ridiculous. Like Tesla's been, their cycle time per vehicle, I think, is 30 or 40% faster than the next fastest auto manufacturer in the world, right? And a huge piece of that, it's the manufacturing process that they've designed that's unique to automotive, but a bigger part of it is their integrated supply chain. That is, they treat suppliers in their supply chain as a subset of their organization, and they all operate on the same digital infrastructure. I would ask Neil, how would Windchill customers do that? Because I asked their product developer how they would do that. How would you use separate companies on one common digital infrastructure using, if you say Windchill is the be all end all for digital, he's making a digital transformation argument for PLM here, right? He's saying that that their PLM solution, Windchill specifically, and their other suite of solutions are the foundation of a digital transformation effort. They are not. And the reason I know they are not is because they're focused on digital thread. Okay, and there's no example out there. Okay, there are examples of small wins, but there's no unified example. There is no Tesla to hold up for PTC. Okay, They're not even thinking about that. When they say digital supply chain and unified supply chain, they're not even thinking about what that actually means. It's really scary. It's really scary. I want to get into, I'm going to finish his comments and then we'll take it home real quick. I want to answer your guys' questions too. What's interesting is that this customer wants to unlock value by going with the digital thread approach I highlighted a few minutes ago. Our Codebeamer ALM product helped to complete their digital thread vision. After being a Codebeamer customer for about a year testing out the product, they decided they were all in and ready to move forward with their digital thread initiative. And in Q3, they signed a deal with us that will expand their ARR by 190%. Just because they signed a deal with you after 1 year, by the way, what have I said? You should never make that type of capital investment that far out. 1 year in, think about it with digital transformation. What 1 year in is for most manufacturers. Those of you who are on here, and you know, part of Mastermind and you guys are all actively leading digital transformation initiatives all over the world. Okay? Think about where you are after just 1 year. Okay? Now they're talking about their application lifecycle management software, and that the reason they know they're helping this customer is because their customer has unlocked the potential of digital thread in 12 months. Okay? Think about where you are at the 1 year mark. And that's the best he can hold up. And what he's really said is we have a customer who has unlocked some value in the first year. They don't know the art of the possible, so they have nothing to compare it against. They see some win, and now we've gotten them to make a huge commitment. That's what he's saying. That's what he's holding up as the example of success at PTC. That's not the example I would show. We had a client. I showed up a 100% increase in revenue in 18 months. There's a 100% increase. There is a case study I showed of a tier 1 automotive supplier. You guys have seen this case study a million times, and I actually walked through the whole case study. They paid $250,000. I paid the other $250,000. Okay, this was in a high value product. It yielded a $25 million return in 18 months. $25 million. And then they took that $25 million and they fed it into they literally created their digital transformation team for all of North America. And that started in 2018, and they're still going. And the last time I had a conversation with the guy who's leading it, he told me that they're in the 200+ million return. Like, he's saying that a win is that a customer had decided, they saw enough value to decide to increase their spend on our licenses by 190%. That was what he said. I mean, I read this whole thing and I'm just like, wow, this is a CEO who doesn't get it. I mean, he's obviously smart, you know, but when it comes to digital transformation, as a reminder, ALM, or application lifecycle management, helps engineers keep track of product requirements and test to ensure that all requirements are met. This traceability is very important in safety critical and regulated industries, including the automotive and medical equipment markets, and it's been growing in importance across other industries because of the trend towards software-driven products of all types. Products now contain more embedded software than ever, and as for many products, there's been an explosion in the number of unique software configurations that need to be developed and updated over time. And then he goes into Codebeamer, which I'm not going to get into that piece. And then he does a third customer example. He says, which is a ServiceMax SLM win on slide 7. SLM is Service Lifecycle Management, and one of our main products here is ServiceMax, the industry leader in field service management for high-value, long lifecycle products. In Q3, we landed a new PTC customer because of ServiceMax. Okay, the customer engineers, manufacturers, and services, industrial and electrical power systems around the world, and they like that ServiceMax has become a part of PTC. The drivers behind this win were similar in many ways to the elevated company win we highlighted on last quarter's call. The point is that many product companies are not only focused on managing complexity and accelerating time to market, they're also looking for new sources of top line and bottom line growth. In this example, the customer had a CEO-led initiative to better leverage their installed base to grow aftermarket revenue in a repeatable and cost-effective manner. Because of organizational silos, the customer currently has fragmented service business operations. I'm going to move forward. No one cares about the service stuff. And then I'll just get to the last piece. He says, we've been reinvesting in our business, consistently growing our annual R&D investment footprint to provide greater value to our customers. In Q3, we made incremental progress in each of our 5 focus areas toward executing in a scalable fashion and focusing our investments on the product advancements that customers care the most about. And as I emphasized earlier, you should expect to see a continued focus on aligning all our resources across all operational functions in this company behind our 5 focus areas. This is foundational work. It's going to take time. Progress may not be linear. He's warning shareholders, but we will leave no stone unturned. And as I said, as we focus on scaling our business and furthering improving the consistency of our execution, with that, I'll hand it over to Christian. All right. So my takeaways from the earnings call and all the conversations I've had. Get this. I know a lot of people at PTC. Okay, I know a lot of people at PTC and the companies they own. Not a single person reached out to me to say that I was unfair in the video on Friday, with the exception of, there was a person, but they're not with PTC. And their position was I was just too hard on Mike, that it was an ad hominem attack. Let me say this. I'm not making an ad hominem attack on Mike DiTilio. What I am doing is I am observing that the new CEO has taken the lay of the land, and he has said, we haven't been operating effectively, and I got to turn over every stone to figure out what the problem is. But what I have identified is that ThingWorx and Kepware are not part of our strategic future. Okay, that Rockwell partnership, I probably wouldn't have done it if I was CEO. Okay, because the CEO doesn't mention those 3 things at all. What he spends all of his time talking about is PLM software, which is where he's going, ALM, and ServiceMax funneling customers in. That's what he's talking about. And he keeps harping on digital thread. Now, let me ask you that. You know, the more I think about it with PLM, is digital thread an appropriate architecture for product lifecycle management? And the answer is possibly, with 2 caveats. Number 1, that you have a digital thread infrastructure that will support additive context. Okay, so I don't know how you're going to, if what you want to do is you want to collect the most important data in the business, as I model my manufacturing operations with product lifecycle management. The most important data is what actually happens, not what we plan to happen. Okay, but it's the variances against standard, right? Yeah, you have to have a mechanism to capture that, right? And I did get a chance to see that with Windchill. You have to have a mechanism to capture that, but you're only capturing that which you predefined as important to the product. There is no mechanism to add additional context, other sensors, relative humidity in the plant, that kind of stuff. And number 2, you have to support a heterogeneous and homogeneous data model. So homogeneous is the thread, that's the object. Heterogeneous is the additive stuff. So with the content, with the caveat, yeah, maybe for PLM, but not for digital infrastructure. All right, any questions in here? Yasir. How much of their struggle is really due to this is Khalil. How much of their struggle is really due to their framework approach? I doubt most people there could give an actual definition of digital thread. Correct. PTC is selling products. They're not solving problems. And obviously Neil identified that. Obviously Neil identified that was a problem because their CRO and the COO is going. Like, he's getting rid of one of the positions, and he got rid of both the people. And he didn't say that the person I talked to who was texting me was like, oh, this is just an executive bringing in his own people. No, it isn't. This is an executive saying there's a problem with the way this company runs. And I don't need those roles. In fact, I got to get as close to the operations as possible to turn over every stone to figure out what the fucking problem is. That's what he's saying. I'm not going to put someone in that role, because we're going to have to completely rebuild operations. I can't give a COO the operations to lead if we're going to completely rebuild them from scratch, because there's a fucking problem here. All these words, the words he's using in here, he's saying there's a problem. But the things we should be encouraged about are PLM, ALM, and SLM, service lifecycle management. He's saying we should be encouraged by those things. If I'm using ThingWorx, I'm concerned. If I work at Kepware, I'm concerned. I said before that I think Litmus should acquire Kepware, and I stand by that position. The more I thought about it, another really good option is Inductive Automation acquiring Kepware. It's another really good option. Imagine you were Kepware and HiByte together as one company. Man, I hope Tony Payne is knocking on the door right now. You guys are investing in HiByte. If you're an investor in HiByte, you should strongly be looking at that. I mean, there's already a de facto partnership. There's already de facto relationships. I mean, hell. And then what do you need to do at Kepware immediately? All in on Linux drivers. The 3 to 5 year strategy is a migration across from the core driver structure into a new Linux-based Kep server. Something that's easily deployable and manageable with a Docker or Kubernetes infrastructure. Yeah, you got competitors out there. Litmus makes drivers. Inductive Automation makes drivers. Newsflash, nobody uses Inductive Automation's drivers at scale. I mean, it's not that they're not garbage drivers, but you make an architectural decision that I'm not going to run my device drivers inside of a Java virtual machine that's my gateway and use up 30 to 40% of my resources, handling drivers. You make an architectural decision with Ignition because, the gateway is basically just a big Java virtual machine. So for every module that you're running, distributor, transmitter, everything, there's memory being consumed in that JVM. And Java is not really good at getting much bigger, getting much bigger than, say, 12 gig in a single instance. So, I mean, that's a perfect marriage. That's a perfect marriage. I think the Litmus Kepware marriage is a perfect marriage. I think the HiByte Tulip Kepware marriage is a perfect marriage. I mean, there's fucking enormous amounts of opportunity. And if what PTC did with Kepware is any indication of their strategic vision and their capabilities as leaders, they are terrible at strategy and they're terrible at leadership. Because the single most untapped valuable asset that they have, untapped, is Kepware. It's crazy. All right. If that would have, it seems that the industry alignment on the meaning and definition of words and phrases is missing or lacking depth. Yasir, still their aim is to optimize the product with digital thread. None of the PLMs optimized that I came across optimizes the business. That's true. Even that requires modeling from the edge, not the other way around. Amen, brother. I mean, you can tell he's a guy who builds data ops platforms. Dustin, over 3 hours to sort out a license transfer. Please submit a ticket online before you call. I cannot create a ticket for you. And then Yasir, if that would have worked, shop floor should be represented completely in PLM. I've never seen an up-to-date PLM that is 100% representation of the shop floor. Production is king, not PLM. Amen. This is also the reason digital twin is always latent. When someone says digital twin, I always say, no, it's a snapshot. It's not the twin. It's a snapshot in time. UNS is much closer to a digital twin than digital twin solutions are. Annabelle, Kep Server LX runs on Linux docs arcades. Yes. I'm not saying or on Kubernetes. I'm not saying that there's no Linux. There's no Linux solution at Kepware. What I'm saying is that PTC didn't invest in it. There was the initial Rockwell driver, Siemens driver. Like, they didn't make a huge investment in it, is what I mean. They didn't go all in strategically on it. That's what I mean. And the other thing that Kepware's got to do, obviously, is Kepware's got to get on the Sparkplug train. They got to get on the Sparkplug train. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns? To take it home, I just want to make sure that people understand, this is a big deal, what's going on at PTC. This is a big deal. And if you've got ThingWorks, I'd be getting on the phone, and I'd be getting assurances. That's what I'd be doing. I mean, obviously not going to abandon it. They're going to maintain it, but if people have been promising you feature sets and stuff, I guarantee that's going to slow down for sure. I mean, based on how I read the earnings call. All right. Thanks, gang. Like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you guys in the next one.